Hey guys, TechMentor here with the video for you guys. In today's video, we're going to talk about the iPhone XR going into 2022 and if it's worth buying it in 2022, what you can expect out of it and if it's a good buy for you and things to consider comparison to some of the newer phones like the iPhone 12, iPhone 11, and the iPhone 13 lineup. So let's dive into today's video. As you can see here in my hand are the two colors of the iPhone XR here. I have the product red and the black one. And the interesting thing about the iPhone XR was that Apple started to get really creative in terms of the colors that they were dishing out with the iPhone XR. You can actually get this iPhone in blue, white, of course black here, that we have yellow, coral, and product red. So 6 different colors that this iPhone comes in. Really unique when you think about it, because this is the first time Apple really went out and started to introduce some of the newer colors on their phone, and this is where things get a little bit exciting. The other thing about the iPhone XR was the screen side that it came out with. So if you know the iPhone history, when the iPhone 10 came out, it had a big screen. You have the iPhone XS and the XS Max, but besides all of those were the premium option, which you had to pay $1,000 or so. The iPhone XR window was introduced as affordable, yet still capable of a lot of the things that the iPhone 10 and the XS was able to do, but at a more affordable price. Now, if you're looking at this phone, Apple discontinued this phone, so if you can't really directly go on their website and buy it. However, you can actually get this phone from some carriers and also pre-owned if you're looking on eBay or Amazon, which we'll leave a link in the description section for you guys. You can actually score this phone right now for probably around $250 to $300. Again, considering that this phone again has some pretty unique features, you might be considering the iPhone XR for some reasons that we're going to explain in the video here. Overall, let's take a look at the build quality of this phone. So both front and back are glass of it, so you can do wireless charging with it. You got these premium stereo grade speakers going on for it. Again, that body with that rounded edge. Of course, the edge here isn't shiny, but that doesn't really matter. And a lot of other feature going for it. You got that whole screen here. The one thing that the iPhone XR does lack is that Oled display. When Apple put the display on this, because it is not the premium one, because they wanted to make it a little bit affordable, they put in that LCD one, which sort of a trade-off for the resolution that the OLED would have given you. But nonetheless, doesn't mean that the phone doesn't have a great display. It does have a pretty good display. In some cases, the LCD might be a better option, because with OLED, sometimes you have screen burn depending on the phone, which we saw some of the issues appear on the iPhone 10 and the XS. Now, other thing to mention about the iPhone XR here, as we mentioned, it does have that A12 Bionic chip, powerful chip with 3 gigs of RAM. So when it comes to multitasking, gaming, social media, all of that can be done with this phone even in 2022. The other hardware thing that we want to mention is the storage size of it. Again, the storage size is something, if you really care, because now you're not using the iCloud, you might be concerned, because at the base model you get only 64 gig, which in 2022 doesn't seem like a lot. You can actually get this in the 128 gig. Of course, you'll pay a little bit more, and then 256 gig. So in terms of comparing to a newer iPhone 13, which can go up to 1 terabyte for the Pro model, the iPhone 64 gig or even the 256 gig doesn't seem like a lot. But even the 256 gig, it still can hold a lot of photos and videos as well. Now, other things to mention about the iPhone XR here, it's going to be the battery size. So because it is a bigger body phone, Apple is able to put a bigger battery on it. So the battery size here is a 2942 mAh battery, which is a huge battery. It gives you about 16 hours of video playback. Now, if you compare it to the iPhone 13 Pro, which gives you around 22 hours of video playback, not too shabby for a phone that right now costs around $250 to $300 pre-owned, compared to that $1,000 for that iPhone 13 that you have. Now, we mentioned that performance again is optimal on it. The other thing we want to talk about is going to be the software of this phone. So this one right now, as you know, we are able to update this phone to iOS 15, which came out last year. Originally, the iPhone 10R debuted on iOS 12, so 3 generation update. Later this year, when iOS 16 presumably comes out, it will most likely get that iOS 16 update, and even next year when iOS 17 comes in, most likely we'll get it. As we know, Apple supports most of their phones for 5+ years nowadays. As we've seen with the iPhone 6s, that we were supported on iOS 15 when all of us thought that it wasn't going to be supported earlier last year, but later on Apple kind of surprised everyone with that support here. So in terms of software support, expect another good 2 years out of the major software update on this phone. It's going to be relevant, and that's important, especially if you're on a phone that can download all of the apps that you need, because once Apple stops the software update, that's when the phone starts to get a little bit sluggish, not being able to support some of the apps that seem to just keep on updating every single day, and that's going to be really important for us. So when it comes to things like listening to music or simply just using this phone for watching, your favorite Netflix show or favorite video, or even on YouTube, it is a good size phone because of that 6.1-inch display that we get out of this phone. So a lot of positives for this phone here that we seem to have in 2022, and that's where we're going to kind of break it down for you, is that camera. Now, as you see, this phone is another aspect where it might be a little bit lacking, because the iPhone 10R here does only have one single 12 megapixel camera compared to the iPhone 10 and the 10R, which are the premium $1,000 phone. Even at that iPhone having that 112 megapixel camera, you still can take some great photos. So for the camera app, you'll notice one thing about the portrait mode: it is limited to only studio and contour light, compared to about 6 or 7 different modes on the iPhone 10R, 10s, and the 10 here. But nonetheless, when it comes to taking great photos, you can actually take some really good photos. You can actually even record up to 4K in 60 frames per second. So we were able to take some really good photos, which we did a video test on, that you could pretty much see that there isn't a lot of difference when you're shooting on iPhone 10R versus the iPhone 10s. So a good camera overall. Now, if we really go down and break down some of the things that the iPhone 10s is lacking, of course, compared to the iPhone 12 and 13 lineup, it's lacking that 5G. Of course, if you want to use 5G, which seems to be the modern trend for most carriers and starting to become mainstream, iPhone 10R unfortunately does not support 5G. Other things to mention about the iPhone 10R, as you mentioned, just because that one single 12 megapixel camera just doesn't seem like a lot, because with the Pro lineup that you have with the newer phones, you have triple cameras. So if you're really looking for a phone to do a lot of photography and such, probably not the phone to do it, even though that it can take some really good photos for you. The other thing missing is that, of course, because this is only a LCD, it doesn't support that 120 hertz refresh rate, which Apple started to introduce with the iPhone 13 lineup. And lastly, probably another downside of the iPhone 10R is that it is only limited to 256 gig storage, where if you really want a lot of storage like 512 gig or a terabyte, the iPhone 10R unfortunately limited to that. But it's not to say that you can't get around using the iCloud Plus for it, which most people do nowadays anyways. So if we really think about, is the iPhone 10R worth it in 2022? It's going to be yes and no. It is definitely worth it because it has a great battery. It supports the latest software. Even when iOS 16 comes out, it's going to be supported here. And at the price of around $250 to $300, it is a steal in that terms. Now, if you really want to do a price comparison and you can afford to pay maybe extra $100 to $150, you can get the iPhone 11, which now you get an improved camera, a little bit more performance, and a phone that's going to be supported a little bit longer. And Apple currently, if you go on their website, you can actually score the 11 because they're still selling that iPhone 11 here, which again seems to be one of the best devices right now for your money that you can get on the market. So for the iPhone 10R, it is definitely worth it, but if you do a real honest value comparison, probably the 11 is what we would recommend. But if you have this phone, keep on using it because it is going to be a phone that's stable, supported for the next 2 years at the minimum. So we want to hear from you guys. What are your thoughts on the iPhone 10R? Leave a comment in the comment section with your thoughts and opinion. See you guys next time.